तालमेल करके इलेक्टर आज सुबह सर इतना जल्दबाजी क्यों कर रहे हैं?
Pandemonium in Parliament.
There should be existence of law.
Union Law Minister tables the Election Reforms Amendment Bill 2021. Bill to link Aadhaar with voter identity card.
Sir, I beg to move that the Election Law Amendment Bill 2021 be taken up for the consideration.
Opposition cries foul.
ये जो आधार एक्ट है इसके लेजिस्लेटिव कॉम्पिटेंस के बियॉन्ड है, इसलिए हम इस विधेयक की इंट्रोडक्शन का विरोध करते हैं।
Opposition unites to oppose the bill in House.
This bill allows government the power to suppress, disenfranchise, profile voters and discriminate between beneficiaries of government schemes.
Battle over linking Aadhaar to voter I-card is our top focus on India First. Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju insists that the Parliamentary Standing Committee recommended linking Aadhaar to electoral rolls to remove bogus voters and purify the electoral rolls. He insists steps that are being taken after due diligence and deliberations. But the opposition remains on the warpath, saying the move is aimed to disenfranchise hostile voters. We get you all sides of the story on the broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant, as always. The Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 linking Aadhaar to the electoral rolls was passed amidst pandemonium in Lok Sabha today. Tabling the bill, Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju said that the electoral rolls should be credible and the effort was to stop bogus and duplicate voters. This has been a long-standing demand of the Election Commission to weed out duplicate voters from the national electoral rolls. But the opposition united to call it an attack on privacy and a plot to disenfranchise voters. Our political bureau with our top story.
Amid pandemonium in Parliament, the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 was passed in Lok Sabha. Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju tabled the bill, saying electoral rolls should be credible and that the aim was to check bogus and fake voters.
दिसंबर 2021 को हम लोग सब चाहते हैं कि देश में जो इलेक्टोरल रोल है, सूची है, चुनाव सूची है, वो अच्छा हो, सही हो, जेन्युइन हो, ये सब चाहते हैं। इलेक्शन कमीशन भी यही चाहते हैं। तो इसमें एक प्रावधान डाला गया है कि आधार कार्ड जो एक नागरिक के पास या जो एक ऑर्डिनरी रेजिडेंट के पास आधार कार्ड है, उसको इलेक्टोरल रोल के साथ लिंक करने का एक प्रावधान रखा है। ये वॉलंटरी है, कंपल्सरी नहीं है, मैंडेटरी नहीं है।
The Union Law Minister sought a discussion in a peaceful atmosphere, saying the issue had been debated threadbare by the Election Commission of India with the centre and the states. He insisted that the Parliamentary Standing Committee that comprised members of different political parties had discussed the issue at length and had unanimously recommended linking Aadhaar to voter I-card to purify electoral rolls and reduce malpractice.
स्टैंडिंग कमेटी से ही रिकमेंडेशन होकर आया है। सर, मैं सदन को जानकारी के लिए मैं स्टैंडिंग कमेटी का रिपोर्ट को पढ़ना चाहता हूं। द डिपार्टमेंट रिलेटेड पार्लियामेंट्री स्टैंडिंग कमेटी ऑन पर्सनल पब्लिक ग्रीवेंसेस एंड लॉ एंड जस्टिस इन 105th report has stated that committee is of the view that linking of Aadhaar number with electoral roll will purify electoral rolls and consequently reduce electoral malpractices.
However, the opposition saw this as a big attack on privacy.
देखिए, मैंने तो विरोध किया है इसका, क्योंकि आधार एक्ट इसकी अनुमति ही नहीं देता कि आधार और इलेक्टोरल रोल की लिंकेज हो सके। और जब ये मामला न्यायालय में जाएगा, अगर ये बिल पारित होता है, तो जरूर मेरा ये मानना है कि ये अवैध, अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल ठहराया जाएगा।
Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary demanded the bill to be sent to Parliamentary Standing Committee for a detailed discussion.
इतना जल्दबाजी करने की क्या जरूरत थी कि आज ही बिल इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाए, आज ही बिल को पारित किया जाए? इतना हड़बड़ी जल्दबाजी करने की बजाय क्या है? 3-4 बिल अभी भी बाकी है, वो तो सिलेक्ट को भी भेजा जा रहे हैं और बार बार हम गुहार लगाते आए हैं कि कम से कम स्टैंडिंग कमेटी तो भेजा करो।
AIMIM MP Asaduddin Owaisi said that the government will have the power to disenfranchise voters and will profile voters identifying beneficiary of government schemes, thereby adversely impacting free and fair electoral process.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजमेंट के खिलाफ है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि आधार को वेलफेयर मेजर्स के लिए सिर्फ इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है, और जब ये इस तरह का आधार को आप जोड़ेंगे तो फिर हमारे पास जो सीक्रेट बैलेट का पूरा मकसद ही नाकाम हो जाए। गवर्नमेंट का डेटा होगा, तो ये डेटा के जरिए ये बीजेपी सरकार बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाएगी हमारी डेमोक्रेसी के लिए, और डेमोक्रेसी हमारे भारत के बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर का हिस्सा है।
Thank you very much.
Congress MP Shashi Tharoor too hit out at the government, saying Aadhaar is not proof of citizenship, insisting it should not be used for electoral roles.
We are forgetting that Aadhaar was only meant to be a proof of residence. It is not a proof of citizenship. In our country, only citizens are allowed to vote, sir. So if you are in a position where you are asking Aadhaar for voters, all you are getting is a document that reflects residence. It does not reflect any proof of citizenship.
Some experts argue that the move is aimed at removing duplicate voters from the electoral rolls, and linking Aadhaar to the voter ID card has been a long-standing demand of the Election Commission.
Amid massive protest by the opposition, Election Laws Amendment Bill was passed today in Lok Sabha. Well, the opposition came out of the Parliament House and said that this entire bill was bulldozed and was brought in connection with the upcoming assembly elections, in particular that of Uttar Pradesh. The allegation of the opposition was denied by the government, but one thing is for sure, as the bill is set to enter the Rajya Sabha, a massive showdown is also expected in the upper house of the parliament. Supriya Bhardwaj for India Today in Delhi.
So is this an effort to weed out duplicate voters, or is there merit in the opposition saying the move is to disenfranchise a section of electorate and will give the ruling party an unfair advantage in upcoming elections? Also, how do numbers stack up in Rajya Sabha, where the bill comes up tomorrow? Joining me on India First, Tom Varakan represents the Bharatiya Janata Party, Muhammad Khan represents the Congress. Also with us is Dr. S.Y. Qureshi, former Chief Election Commissioner of India, and Rahul Srivastav, National Affairs Editor of India Today. Tom Varakan, Congress MP Manish Tiwari says the bill is bad in law. Aadhaar Act does not permit linking Aadhaar to electoral rolls. He says it's for subsidies and benefits. Right to vote cannot be linked to Aadhaar, sir.
Well, whatever my good friend has said, there are loopholes in it. He says that it cannot be a law. The Supreme Court has said that. But the point here is it is not compulsory, it is voluntary. So the issue is larger. When the first pilot project was put up, it came out successful. It came from the Election Commission itself. It was not a government proposal. I heard our Congress panelist on another channel quoting the law and the Supreme Court, what have you. But this purification of the voters list started off from the state of Kerala, where the government said, well, all this bogus voting has led to the situation that it was prevailing then. So the issue here is an attempt to purify the system.
Okay.
Here's an attempt to ensure bogus voting doesn't happen. Extraordinary rigging doesn't happen. These are conditions that are positive. Instead of supporting us, vested interests who have some finger in the pie want to explain out that, well, you know, that it affects the sovereignty, freedom of voting and what have you. The reality is, Gaurav, this is an attempt to reform the electoral system.
Okay.
Democracy is in full play to ensure one man who has an identity card, voter identity card, doesn't have multiple of them. And
fair enough. Let me take this to Muhammad Khan of the Congress. The Law Minister on the floor of the House, Muhammad Khan, said electoral rolls must be credible. The effort is to weed out duplicate voters. Law Minister also contends that the Parliamentary Standing Committee was unanimous in its recommendation to link Aadhaar to voter ID.
Right. So, Gaurav, first and foremost, we must address something, and that is the trust deficit. This government comes with a huge trust deficit, and therefore questions will naturally arise. Don't forget, Gaurav, this is the very same government that 3 years ago stood in the Supreme Court and said that its citizens do not have a fundamental right to privacy. You, I, or anyone else on this panel can be the subject of surveillance, is what they argued in theory. So you will forgive us if we approach this with a certain degree of caution. The second thing I want to say to my former colleague, and who now speaks for the BJP, is that, sir, you will recall that the Election Commission already does this work of seeding out bogus voters. There's something called the SSR. Rolls are revised periodically. Bogus voters are culled out, and the list is prepared afresh. You have not been able to justify, either in Parliament or outside, why this move is necessary. Here's the other thing, Gaurav. This is not something new. If my colleague had done his research, he would know that in 2015, they brought this exact same program, and it was stayed by the Supreme Court. All these justifications were presented before the Supreme Court. None of them passed muster. Okay. The second point, Gaurav, is that now we have a constitutional right, a fundamental right to privacy. The Supreme Court has said that Aadhaar cannot be used except for social welfare schemes. My friend has not justified how this circumvents that safeguard. My friend has also not explained what happened in the case of Andhra and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana in 2018. Gaurav, you will remember that in December of 2018, as a member of Parliament pointed out today as well, 55 lakh voters were disenfranchised in the name of linking of Aadhaar and voter ID. This is an imperfect exercise that comes at a great cost. And finally, this Mr. Vadakkar, in 2021, this year, the Madras High Court has issued notice because a very serious charge has been made that your BJP colleagues, who you so seek to defend today, had access to Aadhaar data. There is an inquiry underfoot at this moment. You think we trust you? You think the citizens of this country can trust you?
Let me take this to Dr. S.Y. Qureshi. For a bird's eye view, he was former Chief Election Commissioner of India. And Dr. Qureshi, did this initiative not start when you were Chief Election Commissioner of India? Will linking Aadhaar to voter iCards weed out duplicate voters, or is there an apprehension that something could be misused by the ruling party or the ruling government?
Well, it is true that this whole exercise started in my time, 2011. The Unique Identification Authority was just set up. Nandan Nilekani came to call on us, and to understand, by then we already had 55 crore electoral roll, and they were just starting. That was the time when we had also started biometrics. We were trying to adopt biometrics for identification of voters, and we did an exercise in Goa, the entire state of Goa. We did this exercise, and when Nandan came to meet us, we decided that instead of duplicating the effort, because collection of fingerprints is an effort and takes time and cost, so we said, you go ahead with that, and at some point in time we will integrate the two, and we will use your biometrics for our identification. Why we were enthusiastic about this was that duplicate voters was a constant problem. Every district we were trying to use the deduplication software. Every district had its own software, and we had limited success because you can find duplicate within a constituency, but what if somebody is also registered in another constituency in the district or outside the district or outside the state versus still outside the state?
So the Aadhaar card will help weed out duplicate voters. One Aadhaar, one vote across the country.
Correct. That was the whole idea, that through Aadhaar, we will be able to identify the duplicate voters and remove them.
Give me a moment. Let me quickly bring in Rahul Srivastav, and let's keep this conversation going. Rahul Srivastav, government has the numbers in Lok Sabha. So despite this din, the bill sailed through. What happens in Rajya Sabha when the bill comes up tomorrow? How do numbers stack up there?
Gaurav, we have seen that since 2014, when this government came to power, the government was terribly short of numbers in the Rajya Sabha, so much so that BJP was second to the Congress party as far as number is concerned. That situation stands altered. The BJP is the single largest party, but the BJP does fall short in terms of NDA as a bloc in the Rajya Sabha to get the numbers. But what one has seen is that the government has maneuverability vis-a-vis players within the non-Congress, non-BJP fold, parties like the TRS, the YSRCP, the BJD and others, who have come out and bailed the government because of their own political and other compulsions. And that is why what the government sources are saying, there is absolutely no worry as far as the numbers is concerned in the upper house also is concerned.
Fair enough. Tom Vadakkan, whether it's KC Venugopal or Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, both Congress leaders have said bills are being brought without scrutiny. They need to be sent to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. There needs to be a detailed discussion, due diligence, and only then they need to move forward. The government is using brute force to ram bills down the opposition's throat.
Gaurav, how many times can you send the same bill to a standing committee? The bill, the ministers declared, he read out the text of the entire bill going to the standing committee. And these are techniques, standard operating techniques of the Congress party to kind of send it again for a detailed discussion. They are for discussion at a level at which you can put the entire reform process in a freezer, because it doesn't please the diners. They want a situation where everything is honky-dory with the system that they run and the kind of voters that they have and they've encouraged. I dare say this is a challenge to the Congress party and other parties who oppose it to tell us how many bogus voters are on the list that they are worried about. They take it to the Supreme Court. Yes, we will fight it in the Supreme Court. And the point here is these things don't work. People of India have woken up. I mean, you can argue this till the cows come back, but the reality is this purification of the voter list is important.
Sir, that's a grave charge that you level at the Congress, that you lay at the Congress's door. And Mohammad Khan, you must respond. The BJP is saying Congress wants to protect the bogus voters. BJP spokespersons have been saying that it's a Rohingya vote bank that, you know, that the opposition is trying to protect through the opposition to this bill, when unanimously the Parliamentary Standing Committee recommended this purification process of the electoral rolls. And here, a different tune is being sung, sir.
Right. So, Gaurav, first of all, I am not surprised to hear my former colleague speak in these terms. I mean, he seems to possess the zeal of a new convert, and he seems to have therefore forgotten that we have an impeccable record when we were in government of sending bills to the standing committee.
Top of the points.
Yes, Mr. Vadakkan, I'm arriving at the point, and you have arrived at this point yourself several years ago, which is that we asked for transparency. Mr. Vadakkan, I didn't interrupt you. Now let me finish.
No, I mean, when you get personal, I'll get personal.
All we are asking for, Mr. Vadakkan,
to know what you are
please go ahead, Mr. Vadakkan.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
gentlemen, ground rules, no personal barbs. Let's stay on the issue. Let's answer the question asked, please.
Of course, I'm surprised he is not. He should wear his current.
Go on, sir. Mr. Khan, on merit, sir.
All we're asking is for transparency. All we're asking for is, why are you so petrified? Why is your go-to argument about Bangladeshis or Goospetias, etc.? If you're coming forth with a bill that is actually justifiable, that circumvents the concerns, number one, of the Supreme Court, number two, addresses the concerns with regard to voter deletion, and number three, addresses the concerns that the data will be protected, present those arguments, Mr. Vadakkan, instead of going down that rabbit hole as your other colleagues do. Number two, Mr. Vadakkan, I'll tell you why I'm worried about data security. Because in the Supreme Court, when your government was asked to defend Aadhaar, you know what they said? They said the data is safe. It is stored behind 3-foot thick walls of concrete. This demonstrates a complete misunderstanding of how data works. Because it's not the size or thickness of the walls that count. And even after that, Mr. Vadakkan, you may recall that over the last 7 years, there have been multiple breaches of Aadhaar data. You have debated them on both sides. And therefore, I ask you, how do you come here and address my concern with regard to transparency? How do you
Dr. Qureshi, merit in the points being raised by the opposition. This is an attack on privacy of an individual. Data breach, data leak, and there have been instances, as the opposition points out, in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, where a company working with the political party had access to electoral rolls knew who the beneficiaries were? Does this give an unfair advantage to a ruling dispensation, whether in the state or at the center?
You know, the voter roll is a very simple information. Your name, your father's name, your address and your age and the family members together. And this is already in the public domain. So I do not understand what will be the secrecy breach here. Because every Panna Pramukh has a voter roll in his hand to ensure that he visits the voters door to door. So therefore, I don't know what is the issue of privacy violation.
Okay.
I have yet to understand that.
Fair enough. Rahul Srivastav, several political leaders, whether it was Asaduddin Owaisi or the AIMIM or others, they've raised this point, the issue of privacy. They've also raised the issue, whether it's Manish Tiwari or Shashi Tharoor or others, they've raised the issue that Aadhaar could be linked for government benefits, transfer of those social schemes, perhaps even PAN card for income tax, but not for electoral rolls. But Rahul, is there a breach of privacy if Aadhaar is linked to the electoral rolls?
Gaurav, Qureshi Saab has explained a few things, but he has seen how elections in India unfold. You see, Gaurav, in India now there are 129 crore odd Aadhaar cards. In 2016, the government may have said that it is only for accessing facilities and services, but at that time the Supreme Court order saying it was not mandatory was still in play. Now, if you see what has happened since then, out of the total 110 crore bank accounts, 96 crore have Aadhaar linkages. Virtually every citizen has been forced to give their Aadhaar card for opening a bank account. For mobiles, for everything, we have had to give our Aadhaar numbers. Now, that's still okay, Gaurav. But an election voting card is a mandatory card. It is mandatory for voting. Now, in that scenario, is Aadhaar mandatory? Is it an authentic proof of my citizenship of this country? No, it is not. Since it is not an authentic proof of my citizenship of this country, there have been cases where Rohingyas had Aadhaar cards. We have had cases where they might have even have election cards. But the fact is that a non-mandatory entity is being asked to link to a mandatory entity. Second, how do you know that somebody who does not have an Aadhaar card can have an election card? I may not have an election card, Aadhaar card, because I may not be accessing services. It has happened in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. People were omitted. Nobody did a door-to-door survey to check whether those people are valid voters or not. There are a lot of pitfalls, but right now it is voluntary. But the fact is, Qureshi Saab will concur that once, even if it is involuntary, then at a polling booth, some official may say, please show me your Aadhaar card linkage, yours are not linked, and he may send somebody
30 seconds,
away
Dr.
from his right of voting.
Does it make a difference that this is a voluntary exercise at this stage? Or
exactly.
Is the baby being thrown with the bathwater in your appreciation? If it's a good move, should the opposition and the government come together, remove the pitfalls and move forward with it?
Yeah. Correct. You know, I see a problem in its implementation in the sense that the minister himself has made it clear that this is voluntary. Now, how will you get my option? There are 90 crore voters and you have to go back to each of them to get their consent to link it with Aadhaar. So how long will it take? Is it how feasible? Accuracy is feasible. Therefore, the operational details have to be seen. And secondly, if it is such a good thing, why can't the government convince the opposition? They would love it also. Electoral reform is one thing where there should be a unanimity. But what surprises me, I heard it from your report that a standing committee has passed it unanimously.
Yes.
So then I see no problem. But otherwise, they should take opposition along, because if it's a good reform, everybody should be convinced.
I will let that be the last word on the show, on the broadcast. I have run out of time, gentlemen, but this comes up in Rajya Sabha tomorrow. We'll be tracking the story very closely. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me. A quick break. Business Today with Abha Bakaya. On the other side, stay with us.